This is a quick demo of an expense management system I've built on N8N. We're using Quickbooks as the accounting tool, Google Drive as file storage for the invoices, and then Gmail as the email inbox that we're receiving the invoices to. So this is built around a real life example whereby emails will be sent into an inbox containing invoices. Someone would then have to manually upload these to Quickbooks, attaching the invoice and then routing that invoice file over to file storage. This could be anywhere. In this case, I'm using Google Drive. Now, this workflow is meant to automate that entire process. Obviously, when a human does it, there doesn't really need to be an approval layer. So in this system, we send over an approval email to a human for review, because obviously you need to make sure that everything is going into Quickbooks perfectly. Over time, maybe that step would be made redundant or less frequent. But yeah, that's essentially it. I've got here the workflow summary. So essentially, we're receiving the email and classifying it. We're then tagging the email within Gmail as an invoice, extracting the invoice attachment, using OCR to then gather all the information from the file, extracting key values, uploading the expense to Quickbooks, attaching the invoice file to the expense within Quickbooks, rerouting the invoice file to Google Drive and saving it there. And then what we do is we send an email to an approver to then verify on Quickbooks. So that's the flow. I've got the invoice here. I'm going to just get it up. It's just for demo purposes, but we have a City Hospitals invoice here. And again, it doesn't really matter what the contents of the invoice are at this moment in time. It's just, this was quite a complex invoice with a bunch of line items to give it a good test. So here we are. And then essentially what I've done is I've emailed myself. I've attached the invoice to an email and I'm going to send it to myself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run the workflow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the workflow as it comes through each stage. So we're going to run it now. It's going to grab that. It's going to grab that email. We're going to classify it using AI. We're going to add the email tag within Gmail. Here's the OCR. We're using Mistral OCR. I'm not going to get into the technical details of all of this. It's mainly just for just to show you how it works. Extracting key values, creating the expense within Quickbooks, attaching the invoice to the expense within Quickbooks, uploading the invoice to Google Drive, and then notifying an approver. So if we go into Quickbooks and we refresh, as you can see, we don't currently have a City Hospitals expense within Quickbooks. Let's refresh. And here we go. Date, pay, City Hospitals, category, total sales before tax 199,095, 199,095. And again, one thing I haven't put into this is currency conversion, but this is to demonstrate just value input into Quickbooks. I noticed that the invoice currency is USD. You would have, if you're dealing with several currencies and your Quickbooks is primarily using one currency, obviously you would do some kind of currency conversion, I would imagine. But for this case, it's literally just values. We're just checking the values here. Anyway, so let's now view and edit this expense, and we can see we have all of the items here. So we've got City Hospitals, the payee. We're paying on the Visa credit card, which is the account that, say, the expenses come out of. And we have then each of the line items here. So if we just go in, let's do a little quick cross-reference: laboratory services, diagnostic, supplies, emergency room. And you can see we've all put these under health services, product service, which would be correct in this case. And then for values here, I'll let you just quickly reference that. But as you can see, all of the values have come through correctly. Now for the next stage, which is attaching the invoice to the expense, which we've done here, as you can see. So the next step was uploading to Google Drive. And so in this case, the way that I'm doing this, or in this scenario, maybe you would group the expenses by month. And so every month the new folder will be created and then the invoices for that month will be dumped in there. As you can see, the invoice has been routed into this month of April 2026, this dedicated folder. So there we go. And then lastly, the approver has been notified. So I've routed or sent this email to myself as an approver, I've just got my email plus approver. So if we go in here, check the email, a new expense has been added to QuickBooks, and here we go. Expense review required. Hey Max, the new expense has been recorded in QuickBooks and is ready for your review and approval. It's got the ID, it's got the total amount, it's got the date, and then you can click on this button, which will take you directly to the expense within QuickBooks. So super easy for whoever's handling this. So yeah, I mean, that's the workflow end to end. I've got a few considerations here. One being this current setup, we've hard coded the vendor and the expense type within QuickBooks, but in reality, obviously you'll be paying out to different vendors. In this case, it would be a quick fix of extracting the vendor name, matching it to what it is within QuickBooks, and then fetching the vendor ID from there to pass into the API. This is some technical details here, so don't worry if it's too much. A similar thing would happen to the expense type. So obviously there would be a little bit more complexity in the workflow around here just to handle different expense categories and different vendors, but that's that. Also, error handling. I've not introduced any error handling into the workflow thus far, but in a productionized system, of course, there'll be tons of error handling and maybe even a sub workflow to handle when things error partway through the process. Maybe we would have a retry mechanism. And yeah, I mentioned this before, but yeah, we have monthly subfolders, and you would have a separate workflow to generate those folders every month. So the invoices have somewhere to go and get put into the right folder. And lastly, I guess what I mentioned earlier with the invoice being in USD and us using GBP within QuickBooks, you would maybe have some currency conversion if you're dealing with multiple currencies and your accounting tool is mainly in just one currency. But yeah, that was a quick demo of an expense management system I have built in N8N. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope maybe you see the value in it, and if it's maybe something you could consider implementing in your business. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Cheers.